So it's the recording is starting right now. Welcome everybody, and Fernando, you can start by introducing yourself.
Well, thank you for the time and thank you for supporting our program. Well, we started probably in 2016 with the F1 hybrids. We're probably one of the first companies to adapt or embrace the new technology that has been going out in the market for the past 10 years or so. So we planted Finca Sebastián in 2016 with 100% hybrids. So it's probably the first farm that is actually 100% hybrid. So, since then, we always like to do a lot of trials with the different varieties so that we can share that experience with the other growers when they ask us about the cupping profiles and post-harvest methods. So for us, it's important to generate that knowledge for us and for the market, basically. The main variety in that farm is a Milenio variety. That's a crossbreed between Rumen Sudan and Sarchimor. The Sarchimor bloodline is resistant to rust from the Timor region or the Timor hybrid. And the Rumen Sudan will give that extra fruitness in the flavors. It's usually a very large bean, large fruit, and the maturity point it's quite particular. I don't know if you have any questions so far on the production, or you're going into the post-harvest part.
No, maybe. Well, it's very interesting that you mentioned that the cherry is bigger, and that there's more mucilage in the cherry as well, and that is one of the reasons why the coffee is so fruity and sweet, because of the amount of sugars and concentration of sugars in the cherry. So maybe that's something that's important to know. So it's, of course, the post-harvesting is very important, but the quality of the cherry is also already there. So in combination with what Fernando does, and especially this slow drying or extended drying, is what's going to make it much more interesting and much more fruitful.
So basically, the whole idea of the slow drying method for naturals is to maximize that flavors and hopefully get some more wine flavors in the cup and a lot more fruitness if you compare it to traditional drying naturals process.
So I'm gonna be also sharing at some point. I don't know. I'm not an expert in Zoom, so sorry about that. But I do have pictures of the way the coffee is dried. So it's the extended drying. The coffee is set in mounts, like in little hills. So it's a thicker layer of coffee. Reason why the coffee is dried slower. How many days is it, Fernando, that the drying process?
Basically, well, the first part is the location or the physical space. We usually try to select areas that has some sort of a natural shade by trees or foliage, so that we can get some sunlight out of the beds during some point of the day. So we can also delay the process by adapting that. So, for example, if we have a partial shade, we probably get 40% coverage in the morning, 100% the midday, and then 60% afternoon. So that's the reason we select that particular area. The mounds, they need to be at least 35 to 40 centimeters high, so that we can get that additional temperature within the bean and try to get that controlled fermentation during the first 5 or 6 days of the process. So it's very important, not only the height of the beds, but also the rotation that we give them, because it has to be, very often so that we don't get too much temperature. Otherwise, the food will go bad or start to rot, basically.
To ferment too fast.
Yeah, to ferment too fast. And if that happens, then you start to get some, flavors that you don't want in, like vinegar, for example. So it's very important to control that part of the process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I've tried those vinegar coffees.
Yeah, and they're not
not
as nice. So it's part of the more sensitive parts of the process, and that's gonna be placed in the first 6 days since harvest.
Fernando, how many days is the complete drying process?
It's between 25 and 30 days. So a minimum of 25 days and a maximum of 30 days.
Okay.
So if it's less than 25 days, we consider it to be like a fast drying process, and that will probably affect the shelf life of the bean. So, for example, if we export that coffee, you'll probably taste it very nice the first couple of months. But if it's fast drying, it'll get old very fast. So that's why we need to slow dry them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can, keep it in storage for 8 months, 9 months, and won't lose any particular characteristics that you're looking for.
Right. Oscar, do you have an idea of what you will be doing?
Yeah. I'm a little bit crazy because I'm changing brewing methods for many times. First, I'm trying to use 02.
Hario 02.
Hario CO2. And then I changed to CO1.
Yeah.
And now I have Crystal Eye, and now I'm trying the Calita.
Okay, and have you been practicing a lot with the coffee of Benjamin?
Yeah, I'm practice a lot, and I'm drinking very much coffee.
He sends me pictures several times a day. So this is with 255 grams. The next one, this is 220 grams. So he's very diligent in his training, because he's brewing it every day, at least once a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he brews it more than once a day as well. So I don't know if he has time to drink any other coffee than the F1 than the Millennium.
No.
Oscar, do you have any questions for Fernando? Because I think the most important thing is that you're able to tell the story. Of course, I will send you texts and pictures and everything that I've gotten from Fernando, so that you have the complete set of information. But I mean, you have Fernando in front of you, so
Yeah.
go ahead.
I have some. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself as a coffee farmer?
Well, I'm actually pretty new to the whole coffee industry. This first generation, we started in 2016. My professional background. I'm an agronomist, and I got a master's degree in business, and that's before starting into coffee. We saw the opportunity, or what the F1 hybrids could represent to the market. So we decided to invest in this new line of product. If it's, we made the analysis before going in, and if it was traditional coffee, I would probably not be in coffee at this point. But because it's a technological breakthrough in production, it can change the lives of the growers and make them more profitable, offer new alternatives. So that's why we decided to go into this industry. And after being so little time in it, we just fall in love with the whole industry, locally and globally. I mean, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of opportunities that we can do, and hopefully more and more growers will believe in this program.
I think it's very important to mention that Fernando is pioneer in F1 hybrids. So he's I think a leader in the industry, and also especially because he's been planting them as well. So he not only helps other farmers by providing them with new plant material for their farms, but he also has the farms himself. So he's able to experiment with the varieties himself and also be able to advise other producers about the best practices and how they can better grow their coffee if they've already changed to F1 hybrids as well. So he has that knowledge. And I think Fernando is also very resourceful and open about sharing all this information with other people as well, so that the industry grows and we can all help each other. So he's not keeping this information to himself, but he's actually, as he has as a purpose, the idea of just helping the coffee industry grow and continue with the next generation of producers.
That's actually one of the things I love with working with you guys, Fernando and Annalise, that the sense of innovation and the sense of community that we also try to work with as roasters here in Sweden. So it's great to see producers with a similar mindset where we need innovation to change the market, and we cannot be tacaños. I don't know a good word for that in English.
Yeah. Selfish. Oscar, you had another question?
Yeah. How did you taking care of the beans before you're harvesting them?
With a lot of love. No, I mean, the storage after, so from harvest, we wash the fruit once it gets before to the beds. Also, every process we do, we keep the fruit for at least 16 hours in resting, like in resting shelters, so that we can wash it with the clean water and let all of the heat from the field get out to the fruit before we process the beans. With the natural, we don't give it the 24 hours, but we do clean the fruit to get any debris or dust or any anything that we don't want to be in the process, which is very important to to clean the fruit prior to the process, so that we can get a cleaner cup.
Yeah, cleaner cup and more sweetness on the fruit.
It's gonna be a smoother taste, basically.
And I think the question also was how can you give us a quick rundown from seedling to picked fruit, picked coffee cherry?
Okay, the whole life cycle of the plant. Okay, so well, the plant material we propagated asexually through a method called propagation by cutting, or unrooted cutting or stems. Before going into coffee, for more than 30 years, we had the experience of propagating plant material, ornamental plants of probably 1,200 species, and ship them worldwide. So what we did is tropicalize those procedures into coffee, so that we can mass propagate in an effective and clean way these genetics. Because one of the biggest problems of these genetics was the availability to the growers. I mean, people wanted them, but they couldn't get them. They had the contracts with the local coffee agency, different labs, and after 2 years they wouldn't comply 10% of the original demand. So that's where we saw the opportunity in doing adapting the technology that we knew into coffee. So from one plant, from one stem, we root them. It takes about 2 months probably. We transplant them into the bag with sterilized media of soil, rice hull, and organic material. We take care of them for anything between 4 to 6 months, and then we send them to the field. Once in the field, it'll take probably 13 to 18 months of growth before the first harvest. So here's the first key factor of the hybrids. It'll start producing 1 year faster than traditional varieties. And from there, the optimal harvest is going to be after the 3rd year, or starting from the 3rd year of a harvest. It's going to be the optimum for quality and volume. So those are the years that we start to get the 86 and above pointing in the coffee, and anything between 60 to 70 bags per hectare.
Which is 3 times more than the average farm in Costa Rica.
Correct. Actually, the national average is a little over 20 bags per hectare. And the average in our region, in Naranjo, is probably 18. And we're doing anything between 60 to 65.
A lot.
Yeah.
So that's the cycle of the plants themselves, but I don't know, Oscar, if you wanted to know more about the cycle of the bean itself, like the cherries, or was this your question from the plants themselves?
We're
More,
harvesting.
more
the
like
har-
these
Yeah.
fruits.
Go
So
ahead.
the harvest has just ended in the last week or something, right, Fernando? Or are you still?
Yeah, the harvest time for Finca Sebastián, it starts in mid-January and goes all the way to the first couple of weeks of March. This year it was a little bit sooner, but it's 1 week sooner.
Mhm.
So that's the harvest period. We process all the beans. It'll take anything between 7 days on the washed, 15 days on the honeys, and 25 days on the naturals. Probably 40 days on some anaerobics, if you consider the fermentation period. And after that, we give them at least 2 months of resting in parchment prior to preparing the coffee to be exported.
And once, Oscar, right now, like they just ended the harvest in like last week or something, or the week before. I think Fernando's already. Are you already? Is everything off of the trees now?
Not yet, but we need to wait for the last round, because right now it's the flowering period, and we don't want to drop the flowers with the harvest.
Yeah, yeah.
So we need to wait a couple of weeks so that the flowering period passes. It's fairly fast. It's only 1 week, and after that we can finish up the harvest.
Okay, so once the first rains start in Costa Rica, the plants start to flower,
Mhm.
and the flowering period is about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe.
Maximum 2 weeks,
Okay.
and then it'll drop the flower. But we need those 2 weeks.
And once those flowers fall to the ground, you will have little knots on the stems of the plants, and they will take the whole rainy season. Will take those little tiny knots. It will take them about 8 months to grow. First, they're going to be green, then they're going to start to ripen. Until the last month, they will reach their optimum ripeness before the whole cycle of the harvest starts again.
Mhm. Correct.
That's more or less how it goes. Is that a little bit of what you were expecting, Oscar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anything else? Next question.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you processed the coffee from fermentation to washing to the extended natural overall?
Okay, so on every process,
Yeah.
okay, let's say, well, the first one is gonna be the washed coffee. That's more the traditional way of processing coffee. But on our case, we let the fruit rest for at least 12 to 16 hours, so that we can lower the temperature of the fruit to probably 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, so we can get the heat, the field heat away before we process the coffee. In the washed, it passes through the machine through, so after the peeling of the fruit, it has a high pressure water valves that will clean all the mucilage out of the bean. And after it comes out of the machine fully washed, we dry them full sun for 7 days. The honey process, it's very similar, but instead of using the high pressure valves, water pressure, we eliminate that part of the process, so that the bean will have some percentage of the mucilage. So, for example, if you want like yellow honey, it's probably going to be 20 to 30% mucilage. If you want red honey, it's going to be 60% of mucilage. And if you want black honey, it's going to be 100% or 90% mucilage.
Yep.
So it depends on the type of process that you want to do.
And in that coffee I will competing with, this is what honey process?
The natural. I believe you're gonna compete with the natural.
The extended naturally, yeah.
Correct. And the natural is it doesn't pass through the machine. It's with the whole fruit, with the skin, the fruit, the mucilage, everything. It's like drying grapes to get the raisins. It's very similar process.
And it's slow dried. Oscar, just I think that's one of the most important things. The name extended means that it was slow dried.
Slow dried, yeah. Can you describe the slow drying process a little bit?
So the coffee is placed. I don't know if you guys can see the picture that I shared.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, the coffee is placed in like little hills in mounds, and Fernando just told us that they're about 40-45 centimeters high. And the reason that they do it this way is to let the coffee dry slower. Because if you make a very thin layer of coffee on the drying bed, there will be much more heat and much more ventilation. And the reason why the coffee is going to be dried faster. In order to delay that drying process, they are placed in mounds or thicker layers on the drying beds so that the coffee can dry in an extended period. So instead of 10 days or 15 days, which is usually what maybe other farmers do with their naturals, this is going to take around 25-30 days. What will happen by drying it slower is there's going to be a little bit of fermentation in the bean itself. So Fernando has to be very careful with not over fermenting. So they really have to pay attention to the drying process to make sure that it's not more than 30 days.
Mhm. And also it's important to mention that the high mounts, it's gonna be only for the first 5 or 6 days. And after those days are done, we fully extend it.
It's still thicker. It's still thicker layer than usual.
Mhm.
Do you turn the mounts or you leave them be at the same position all through the drying process?
No, we have to turn it probably every 30 to 45 minutes.
Oh.
So let's say that the mount is in position A, they have to move it to position B
Yeah,
and then back to A. So they have to turn it around.
very
completely.
labor-intensive process.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, the temperature within will be very different from the outside. And then we start to get the different fermentation periods.
Yes, because the inside of those mounds are going to start to ferment and they're going to create heat within that mount. So when you turn it, you're kind of like equalizing that temperature again.
Mhm.
It's the same as potatoes. I grew up with doing the same thing with potatoes. So
Okay.
Actually, most
in
of
big
the
amounts.
coffee processes are copied from other industries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Is there any other question, guys? Oscar?
It's a lot we can talk about, but the soil and the microclimate, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, Finca Sebastián is located in West Valley region. It's very close to volcanoes, so soil generally tends to be from volcanic origin. So that basically means that the first, 15 to 20 centimeters of a soil layer is very rich in nutrients, very rich in microorganisms. So what we try to do is keep that soil health as long as we're, producing any crop on top of it. The region, it's at almost 1,800 meters above sea level. Pacific influence, so it has a very well established rainy season and then dry season. But during the dry season, we still get some lower temperatures at night. Lower temperatures, I mean, 10 to 12 degrees Celsius.
Yep.
So that helps the plants, to not stop growing because they get some moisture in the morning due to condensation because of that difference in temperature between night and day. Plants will be constantly growing during summer and winter, obviously more aggressively during winter because of the rainy season, but they will still have some sort of growth during summer, which helps coffee because they won't suffer any stress from heat. At that elevation, we don't need any shadow or any management of a shadow. We just keep the natural trees that were before the coffee plantation. So we respect that in order to keep the soil healthy also. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So I have a small and maybe personal question to you, Fernando, because I sent some coffee with Annalise, so you can try it. And how did you like the competition coffee?
No, I really liked it. That's a question for my wife. She's the more critical and analytical. My tongue will only determine two categories, like or dislike. So, or really like. So I really liked it. But I'll ask her. I'll send you our comments.
You are on mute, Annalise.
Yeah.
I saw it in the shop. They have it in the shop. But Angie is a Q grader. So yeah, she can be a bit critical, yeah. No, but we'll ask her.
Yeah, I love critical people because that's where you get the good feedback that you can work with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Melissa, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do actually. So what really drew me to this particular bean, I mean, aside from its outstanding, taste qualities, is kind of like the innovation and, Fernando kind of pushing through developing a hybrid that is climate change resistant. I think that can really help in telling that story a little bit more. So kind of like, hypothetically, if we look into the future, if global temperatures thus rise beyond 2 degrees Celsius, what's going to happen to the conventional beans? And then, in contrast, what can the Finca Sebastian bring to the coffee industry?
For climate change, more than Finca Sebastian, what we're trying to establish is the whole hybrid technology that's been developed behind these varieties. We've been doing trials, in most of the actual coffee regions in Costa Rica, but also in regions that are not coffee regions anymore because of climate change. Basically, Guapiles is one example. That's the Atlantic coast. We have plants there planted at 45 meters above sea level. It's in my former university, in Earth University. So we've been coordinated with them this trial, and we're moving to the second stage, which is a more commercial size of farm. And so far we've seen results that are very encouraging, and people should start seeing that production as well, so that we can reactivate lost areas because of climate change. So there's a big, the commercial part of the industry have been pushing Costa Rica government to include Robusta varieties for those regions. But we think that there's an alternative and still use Arabicas for those regions. So, outside the political aspect of it, it's possible, and we've been doing it.
Yeah, that is a very aspirational answer. Another lead-on question to what you just said about your trials in the Atlantic coast, where it's like, did you say it was 45
meters.
Yeah, above sea level. How have you guys yielded anything from that trial yet? And if so, were there any differences in flavor notes compared to your estate that's 1,800 meters above sea level?
Well, we've focused all of the research so far in, determining if it's possible, if the plants will be healthy, if they will produce. We haven't focused a lot in cupping yet. That's for this stage of the process. This year we're gonna plant about 4 hectares, and because it's in that particular region, we're probably gonna make the first harvest 12 months from now, because it grows very fast. I mean, if you compare these hybrids down there with the ones that we have 6 years old, in the Atlantic at 45 meters, it'll grow, up to 2 meters high in 3 years. And in 6 years in Finca Sebastián, they're probably at 1 meter and 70 meters, so it's gonna be a lot slower.
But you have Angie, who's the Q grader, so she's gonna be able to remember and pick that out, right? So yeah, that will be exciting. That will be super
compare.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Also,
Yeah.
What we could expect is that it's gonna be a softer bean because of all the moisture, and the concentration of flavors might be a little bit more diluted. And again, because of the additional rain. But that's our initial hypothesis.
And maybe the density of the bean is going to be less than those beans grown at higher altitudes.
Mhm.
It will basically turn out like a low-grown Brazilian, more similar to that kind of coffee, with slightly less bright flavor profile and less dense beans.
I mean, I would expect a much higher body structure, a lot less acidity, but I'm not sure about the fruitness. That's the part that we need to determine as we go along. But hopefully 1 year from now, we'll be able to cup at least the first harvest from this part.
That's when I will travel to Costa Rica, because that interests much.
We can go to the Atlantic and then to the West Valley region.
That's going to be a complicated origin trip. You're going to make it difficult, Ben. No.
I like difficult.
Let's do it.
No, but the whole process is very exciting, because before we got into this business, the complete message was that climate change, we will keep on losing farmland, and that the growers will have to go higher and higher and higher. But with this trial we can reverse that, and maybe refresh the whole industry and have more growers on board instead of losing growers every year.
Mhm. There's hope. There's hope for the coffee industry.
Correct.
You have another question, Melissa? I see you checking your notes.
No, I think I'm going to digest a little bit more of the media pack as well and the storylines. And then in any way I can also lend assistance to Oscar to kind of develop that storyline, you know, anything to really have the copy stand out.
Yeah, and I think something that is also very, very important is we already had somebody compete with the coffee about a year ago, I think, in Austria, and he just described it in like not accurately because he said it was genetically modified, which is super incorrect. So the correct name for it is a crossbreed, but it's a first generation hybrid. So it's very different than saying it's GMO, because GMO coffee doesn't exist at all. So it's also very incorrect. So I think that terminology is very important when you're presenting, so that if you mention, okay, it's a first generation hybrid, it's a crossbreed between Rume Sudan and Sarchimor, that's kind of like, that's the correct wording for it. So that's, I think we should just start at the beginning with that.
I mean, it's not a GMO, like Annalise said. Probably, the next 5 years or so, we're gonna start seeing GMOs, especially from Japan. At least that's my gut feeling from a company called Suntory. But we're still, long way to go. But these F1 hybrids are naturally, well, not naturally, but crossbreeds between different species or different varieties based on specific purposes. And just, an F1 hybrid, let's see, to get a stable variety that you can propagate sexually, you will need an F7 probably. Each generation or each F probably takes about 7 to 10 years. So that's why it's important to propagate asexually any F1 hybrid, because it's the only way. You have to do it through lab or through the method that we're using. The difference is that from lab, it'll probably take 2 or 3 years to establish a single plant. From cuttings, it can take 4 months, 5 months to get that same plant. So the rhythm of propagation is a lot faster through the method that we're doing. So we're making it more accessible to the market.
That method you're describing is basically the Swedish apples market. We graft and propagate and do propagate from cuttings, because you can no longer grow apples from seeds in Sweden, because then you will get some kind of apple that no one ever heard about before.
Correct. So it's probably because of the youth of the generation or crossbreed.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is probably more on the how you cross the breed. As with many things in coffee and brewing, we always talk about repeatability. How did you ensure, the consistency of the fruit when you graft? Or is even grafting a right word to describe the stem cutting method that you're using?
It's not well, grafting in coffee, it does exist. There's people that like grafting. They use a base of a Robusta and a top of a hybrid or another variety, just to get that root resistance to nematodes. That's the main goal for grafting. But what we do is propagating by cuttings. So we're only taking the tips. We've done some grafting for specific customers, but it's a custom-made method because it's way too expensive.
And so when you cut, how do you ensure the consistency and quality of the cherries in the fruit, the berries, berries, yeah.
I think I have a coffee plant around here.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I'll show you.
And I wonder as well, while you're walking there, like when you cut, does this mean then that a single tree has like many strings then of
So
flowers?
this well, that's a Kenya, right? It's not a hybrid, but we do the same grafting. Not grafting, cutting.
Cutting, yeah.
So this is probably a very old plant. You can see, a lot of the stems that has grown and
Yes.
been cut. So this plant is probably 3 to 4 years, but it's still a very short plant. If you saw a coffee plant of 3 years, it's probably gonna be, above 1.5 meters. But because we keep on cutting them, and we change the nutritional feed as well, to make it more vegetative and less sexual, then we get all of these stems. So a cutting is basically this top stem from here, and this will be root in 2 months with specific hormones, and then it'll become a fully matured plant. So by cloning, we can get probably from this plant these 3 cuttings, and they'll grow at exactly the same rate. They will have the same production. If you see them in the beds, you won't see any, like a lake, you won't see any difference in growth rates. So it's all of this uniformity will result in a more uniform flowering period, harvest time, maturity point, because they're basically clones.
It's amazing.
They're not seedlings.
Yeah.
So basically the science is maintaining the same genetics from one plant to the other.
Correct. And every year it's going to be the same plant material. So we've had this discussion with the customers in Panama that they made studies on the whole geisha line, and they found out that because everybody's propagating geisha by seed in their own farms, that there's a degeneration of the genetics. So basically there's a couple of customers that want us to get some seed from them and propagate them asexually so that we can guarantee the stability of the genetics. So eventually in the market, you probably see a geisha specific to a farm, not only geisha, because it is geisha, but it varies.
It's mutating.
Or reverting, or it's gonna manifest differently from each farm. But by cloning, that won't happen.
I see. That then the whole process is just even more so maintaining consistency.
Correct.
For the long term, and then also having resistance to rust and climate change. Yeah.
And based on that, we can even improve varieties.
Yeah.
That, for example, we have 100,000 plants of one particular variety, let's say Centroamericano.
Right.
And we walk through the fields and identify one that has the best performance in harvest, the less disease, the higher foliage, even if it's a slight difference,
Mm.
we can take that particular plant and clone it so that most of them are, rejuvenated from that particular plant.
Amazing. Yeah, I really like the bonsai reference there, Annalise. I mean, it's spot on. I mean, I've seen my grandfather do that all my childhood. Yeah. And recently I also saw a Westerner who adopted the bonsai kind of methodology, and he basically is cutting like some other herb and putting it on rosemary, and because rosemaries have very thick stems, so I thought that was, yeah, it's perfect analogy there. Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I hope it's not too much information, Oscar, for you to put this all together for your
A lot,
presentation.
but I think I can get help with.
No worries. I'm gonna
Yeah.
send you all the links and everything that I put together here. I'm gonna put it on one mail and send it over to all of you so that you have everything gathered together.
And also the recording. Oh, or
Yep.
we down if you so people don't forget to download it as well. So.
Yeah, it's recording right now, and I think it takes a lot of time it's on the cloud, so I have to download it from the cloud and then upload it onto YouTube. So I guess it's gonna take me like 24 hours to do that. So I'll let you know whenever it's online.
It will be good study material.
Yeah, and if there's anything along the way, if you have any other questions or whatever, you can just WhatsApp me. You can put it on the mail also where Fernando's copied. Like anything that you need along the way, just let us know.
Mhm.
When is the competition actually?
The 4th to the 6th of May.
Okay, so a little bit like a month and a half.
Yeah.
Wishing you lots of success, Oscar.
Thank you.
Is there any way to see it online?
I don't know.
I think we will be live streaming it.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will film it and send it to you.
Yes, please.
Excellent.
We'd love that. All right, guys. So we're gonna close it here, and you know where to find us if you have any other questions. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much, Benjamin and Oscar, for choosing Fernando's coffee. It's an honor for us, and we're very happy that the coffee has gotten to this level, because I personally think that Fernando deserves it, and his coffee deserves it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right, guys.
It was a pleasure
Thank
talking to
you.
you.
Talk to you soon.
Oscar. Take
Have a-
care.
Bye.
Pura vida.
Pura vida. Ciao.
Pura vida.